girlfriends and I flirted to get a table at the club. I didn't know they were his friends. Hello, Reddit. My name is Chloe. I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Daniel, for 5 years. Together, we have a beautiful little girl named Sophia, who just turned 3 last month. On the outside, my life probably looks like a dream come true. A stable marriage, a happy family, and a loving husband who has always worked hard to give us the best life possible. But appearances can be deceiving, and the truth is, I've done something that might destroy everything I've ever loved. Daniel's the kind of man women dream of marrying. He's loyal, principled, and one of those rare men who truly believes in doing the right thing, no matter how difficult it might be. He's the type of person you can count on in every sense of the word. Whether it's his family, his friends, or even a stranger in need, Daniel always steps up. I remember when we were first dating, I couldn't believe someone as dependable and kind as him was even real. He had this quiet strength about him, this sense of certainty in who he was and what he stood for, and it made me feel so safe. He made me feel like I had finally found someone I could trust with my heart. But Daniel also has his limits, and if there's one thing he's made clear from the very beginning, it's that he doesn't tolerate betrayal, not in any form. I've always admired that about him, how he values loyalty and honesty above everything else. He told me once, back when we were dating, that his parents had a rocky marriage because of lies and broken promises, and he swore to himself that he would never go through that in his own relationship. He believes that trust is the foundation of love, and once it's gone, there's no getting it back. I used to think that was so noble of him, but now that trust is something I've broken, I don't even know how to begin fixing what I've destroyed. I'm writing this because I feel like I have no one else to turn to. My friends have their own opinions about what happened, and honestly, they're part of the reason I'm in this mess in the first place. I've tried talking to my mom, but she doesn't understand the gravity of what's going on, and honestly, I'm too ashamed to tell her everything. And Daniel. Daniel is the one person I want to talk to more than anyone, but I can't even look him in the eye right now without feeling like the worst person in the world. He's been so distant, so cold, and I know it's all my fault. I just don't know how to make things right again. The truth is, I made a mistake. A huge mistake that I didn't fully understand at the time. I didn't think about the consequences or how much it would hurt the man I love. I was careless, selfish, and stupid, and now I'm paying the price for it. Daniel hasn't said much since everything came to light, but I can see it in his eyes every time he looks at me, the hurt, the disappointment, and worst of all, the loss of trust. It's like I took everything good about us and crushed it with my own hands. I know some people might think I'm being dramatic, but you have to understand, Daniel isn't just my husband. He's my best friend, my rock, the father of my child. Losing him would mean losing a part of myself, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to handle that. I feel like I've failed him, failed Sophia, failed myself. And the scariest part is, I don't even know if there's a way to come back from this. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, hoping for some kind of advice, some kind of perspective that might help me figure out what to do. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can't stop hoping for it. I can't stop hoping that somehow, against all odds, I can save my marriage and earn back the trust I so carelessly threw away. So please, if anyone has been through something like this, or has any advice at all, I'm begging you to share it with me. I don't know how much time I have left to fix this before it's too late. It all started on a Friday night when Jenna and Lisa convinced me to join them for a girls' night out at an exclusive club. I hadn't planned on going, but Daniel had told me to take a break and enjoy myself, offering to stay home with Sophia. At first I resisted, saying I'd rather spend the evening with my family, but Jenna and Lisa wouldn't hear of it. They insisted I needed to let loose for one night and promised it would be harmless fun. I eventually gave in, ignoring the nagging feeling in the back of my mind that told me this wasn't a good idea. The club Jenna picked was the kind of place you'd see in movies, lines stretching down the block, a burly bouncer at the door, and a crowd of people clamoring to get inside. When we arrived, it was immediately clear that getting in wouldn't be easy. The bouncer wasn't letting anyone in unless they were on a guest list or willing to wait for hours. And Jenna, as always, refused to accept defeat. She declared that standing in line wasn't an option and began plotting a way to get us inside. I stood off to the side, already feeling out of place in my modest dress and clutching my purse awkwardly. Jenna and Lisa were in their element, fixing their hair, adjusting their outfits, and surveying the scene like seasoned pros. I asked if we could just go somewhere else, but Jenna brushed me off. She said we weren't leaving and that all we needed to do was be smart about getting in. I didn't understand what she meant at first, but when Jenna approached a group of well-dressed men lingering near the entrance, it became obvious. Lisa joined her, and the two of them started chatting and laughing with the men, gesturing toward the club as if asking for a favor. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't like where this was going, but I also didn't want to ruin the night. Jenna had made it clear that this was how things were going to be, and I was too timid to push back. Reluctantly, I followed them, trying to smile and seem polite without drawing too much attention to myself. The men seemed friendly enough and invited us to join them inside, saying they had a VIP table. Jenna and Lisa were thrilled, and before I knew it, we were bypassing the line and stepping into the club, escorted to an exclusive section with plush seating and a dedicated server bringing champagne to the table. At first, I tried to enjoy myself. The music was loud, the lights were dim, and the drinks were flowing. Jenna and Lisa were clearly having a great time, laughing and dancing while the men lavished attention on them. I told myself there was no harm in being there. It was just a night out, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. But then one of the men, Alex, started paying extra attention to me. Alex was tall, charming, and confident, the kind of man who seemed to thrive in this environment. He sat next to me and asked about my life, his voice low and smooth, and I found myself answering more than I should have. But the funny thing was, I didn't mention Daniel or Sophia. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to escape my own reality for a moment. Maybe I liked the attention. Whatever the reason, I allowed the conversation to continue, even when it became more personal than it should have. The drinks kept coming, and I felt my inhibition slipping away. Alex leaned in closer, his hand brushing against mine, and I didn't pull away. He complimented me, told me I was different, and before I knew it, he was leaning in to kiss me. I froze for a moment, torn between my guilt and the thrill of the moment, but then I kissed him back. It was just one kiss, I told myself, one mistake. But it didn't stop there. The kisses turned into whispered conversations, his hand on my thigh, and eventually Alex suggested we step outside for some air. I didn't stop to consider what I was doing or the consequences. I followed him out of the club, past the pulsating music and flashing lights, to his car parked in a secluded corner of the lot. What happened next was reckless and impulsive, and I can't even explain why I let it happen. I just let my wild side that I never even knew I had take over. We didn't even go far. He just drove a few miles away from the club, and we didn't even say a word to each other. We just quietly moved to the back seat of his car, and I bent over the seat while he worked his manhood through my ass. It was painful because I had never had that type of sex before. Sex with Daniel had always been safe and pleasurable, but Alex was quite different. He was obviously not into foreplay. He just wanted to stick his manhood in me and get it over with. After the whole thing, we still didn't say anything to each other. I just readjusted my clothes and went back to the front of the car. Alex dropped me off back at the club's entrance, and I went back to join Jenna and Lisa, who were still laughing and sipping champagne like nothing had happened. I didn't tell them what I'd done. I didn't tell anyone. I went home that night, crawled into bed next to Daniel, and tried to act like everything was normal. Except it wasn't. As I lay there in the dark, listening to Daniel's steady breathing, the weight of what I'd done began to sink in. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, something I'd bury deep and never repeat. But even then, part of me knew that nothing about this would be that simple. The guilt was already eating away at me, and I hadn't even begun to understand how much worse it could get. The morning after that night at the club, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, my stomach was in knots, and the guilt sat heavy on my chest. Daniel was already up, moving around the house quietly so as not to wake Sophia. I could hear him humming softly to himself in the kitchen as he prepared breakfast for her. That was Daniel, always thoughtful, always putting us first. The contrast between his kindness and my betrayal made me feel physically sick. I told myself that what happened with Alex was just a momentary lapse in judgment, a mistake, a one-time thing. It wasn't like I planned it, I reasoned. It just happened. And it would never happen again. That's what I kept telling myself as I went about the day pretending everything was normal. I kissed Daniel on the cheek when he left for work, played with Sophia in the living room, and tried to ignore the shame eating away at me. I decided right then and there that I would never speak of it, not to anyone. It was better this way, I thought. What Daniel didn't know couldn't hurt him. For the next few days, life carried on as usual, or so it seemed. I buried myself in the routine of being a wife and mother, hoping the guilt would fade over time. But it didn't. If anything, it got worse. Every time Daniel looked at me with those kind, trusting eyes, I felt like a fraud. Every time he told me he loved me, I felt like I didn't deserve to hear it. But I convinced myself I could handle it. I just had to push it all down and keep moving forward. But that wasn't all. Alex texted me. I don't know how he got my number or why, but he did. And he texted me, apologizing for that night. He said he hadn't meant to treat me like that after sex. He explained that he wasn't someone like that and that he wanted to see me again. He sounded so sincere, so remorseful, and I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to block his number and pretend he didn't exist, but another part of me thought I needed to respond to make sure he wouldn't say anything to anyone about what had happened between us. So I texted him back and begged him to keep my secret, which he promised to after I told him I was married and that the other night had been a mistake caused by too much alcohol. We kept texting back and forth, and before long, our conversation moved from casual to flirty, and before I knew it, Alex and I were having phone sex. He'd ask me to randomly send a picture of my panties, and instead of turning him down, I would indulge him by doing as he asked. I would send him a picture of myself in my lingerie, and he would in turn send me pictures of himself in his boxers, his erection very prominent. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but I couldn't help myself. Talking to Alex was thrilling for me, and soon I agreed to a meeting. It was in a hotel room, and we didn't waste time with foreplay as all the foreplay had been done on the phone. He had me against the door the first time, my legs high above the ground, wrapped around his waist, and my panties barely hanging onto my ankle while he plunged repeatedly into me. After we had done that, he moved me to the bed and then turned me on my side and plunged into me again. Alex was insatiable, and it turned me on severally, and before I knew it, we had sex 6 different times before I left the hotel room that day. The third had been against the shower, and another had been me sitting on him. It was very wild. Sex between us, that is. And thrilling too. We met occasionally after that, and we didn't need any conversation between us, just rough and hardcore sex all the way. All these while, I was trying to push down the guilt I felt cheating on Daniel. I managed to convince myself that my perfect lie couldn't be seen through, and that Daniel would never suspect me. I was in love with the danger of the risks I was taking having an affair with Alex, but I didn't know that was going to be my dead end. Then, about a month later, I started noticing little changes in Daniel's behavior. At first, I didn't think much of it. He seemed distracted, quieter than usual. He'd come home from work later than normal, claiming he had extra projects to finish or meetings that ran long. He barely made eye contact during dinner and gave short, clipped answers when I tried to make conversation. When I asked if everything was okay, he just shrugged and said he was tired. I chalked it up to work stress. Daniel had always been dedicated to his job, sometimes to a fault. I figured he was going through a busy period, and I told myself not to overthink it. But as the days went on, his distance became harder to ignore. He stopped initiating our usual late-night talks before bed. His kisses felt rushed, almost perfunctory. It was like he was pulling away, little by little, and I couldn't understand why. I never suspected the real reason. How could I? I had no idea that my mistake that I felt would never be let out, that I only had to deal with the guilt I felt, was going to end up ruining my entire life. I didn't know. I just kept living in my made-believe lie that Daniel would never find out. But what I do know is that Daniel came home that night a completely different person. He walked in the door without the usual warmth in his eyes, without the small smile he always gave me, even on his toughest days. His face was blank, his movements stiff. I tried to greet him, but he brushed past me like I wasn't even there. That night, after so many other nights of keeping quiet and ignoring me around the house, after Sophia was asleep, Daniel finally broke the silence. He was tipsy, I know. When he passed by me, I had smelled the alcohol off him, and I just assumed he had an evening out with the guys. But still, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was different about him. He went directly into the kitchen and gulped down a bottle of water. Then he held my hand and led me to the living room and then sat me down on the single couch, and the look on his face made my heart stop. It wasn't anger, it was worse. He looked hollow, like something inside him had been shattered. He asked me directly if I'd been at the club that day. I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. I knew this was it. The moment of truth. I could have told him everything right then and there, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded and said yes. I'd gone to the club with Jenna and Lisa. My voice was shaky, and I could barely meet his eyes. Then he asked if I'd cheated on him. My chest tightened, and my mind raced. I felt like I was drowning, grasping at anything to keep my head above water. In that moment, the fear of losing him, of losing everything, was overwhelming. So I lied. I told him no. I said we'd only gone to the club for a girls' night, that Jenna had suggested we flirt with some men to get a table in the VIP section, but that was it. I insisted it was all harmless, just a bit of fun that Jenna pushed us into. I begged him to believe me, saying nothing physical had happened and that I would never do something like that to him. I tried to sound convincing, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. Daniel didn't say much after that. He just stared at me for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stood up and said he needed some air. I wanted to stop him, to grab his hand and make him stay, but I didn't. I just sat there as he walked out the door, feeling like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Over the next few days, Daniel grew even more distant. He spent most of his time at his mother's house, claiming he needed to help her with some things, but I knew that wasn't the real reason. When he was home, he barely spoke to me. There were no more goodnight kisses, no more shared laughs over dinner, no more lingering hugs before he left for work. It was like living with a stranger, and it broke my heart. I didn't know what to do. Every time I tried to bring it up, he'd shut me down, saying he wasn't ready to talk. The silence was unbearable. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. And all the while, the guilt was eating me alive. I even stopped having sex with Alex because of how much guilt I felt. I made up excuses. Sophia doesn't want anyone else but me. My husband is home. My husband will be here in a couple of minutes. And more excuses until Alex got impatient and stopped texting me totally. I felt relieved, but still scared. The question Daniel had asked me that night kept ringing in my head, and the better responses or lies I could have told to prove my innocence with it. I hated myself for what I'd done, but I was too scared to tell him the full truth. I thought if I kept the lie going, maybe I could salvage what was left of our marriage, but the distance between us just kept growing, and I could feel him slipping away. So after a few days of the madness in our home continuing, I decided to ask him what was wrong, this time without letting him go until he said something. I had begged him to sit with me and talk things out, but instead, Daniel had let out a short, bitter laugh. He smiled and then sat and asked me what it was I wanted to talk about. I told him the truth then. I couldn't handle it anymore. The suffocation and the difficulties of the truth. I couldn't bear it, so I told him. But I only told him half the truth. I only told him about how I met Alex when I went out with Jenna and Lisa and how we had ended up at the back of his car having sex. I told him how sorry I was about everything I did and I couldn't bear the guilt anymore, hence the confession. The next thing Daniel had asked had been, "And what happened next?" I was shocked because that was not the response I was expecting, but I lied again, scared of the whole truth. So I told him that was all, that it was a one-time thing, but Daniel had given me a cold stare that could freeze a fish. He then finally spoke. And as he spoke, it was like he had a cesarean blade in his hands, and he was tearing through every layer of my skin without anesthesia. He knew. He knew everything. How I met Alex at the club that day and how I had sex with him. He also knew that Alex texted me and that we met up several times again to have sex. He even named the hotel we've been to, and he showed me evidence of our messages. Our sex chat. My nude pictures that Alex had taken after we've had sex, just for fun and remembering the amazing time together, he said, everything was with Daniel. He knew everything and kept quiet all these while, expecting to come out with the truth while he gave me the chance to, but I kept lying and breaking every ounce of trust he had in me. When I asked shakily how he knew about everything, He had smiled sadly and told me that apparently Alex was an acquaintance of his and had made a show of bragging when they hung out about the married woman he was banging. Apparently Daniel had not been moved and had only pitied the poor husband not knowing he was the one until Alex had shown the group the naked picture of this particular married woman that had turned out to be me. Alex had been bragging about having sex with me and still showing my nude poses to his clique of friends that my husband was unfortunately a part of. Only 2 of their other friends knew me and knew that I was Daniel's wife, so the other friends hailed him and hurled insults at the foolish husband for not knowing his wife was cheating on him. Daniel had tried to get me to confess my sins, but I was too stuck in my sins to want to get out. His first attempt had been asking me about the outing I had with my friends, and I had denied ever cheating. He had given me another chance by allowing me to explain the whole club thing, but I still wanted to hide the other part of the truth. Daniel said he was done giving me chances and that he was choosing to walk away from me, a cheating wife. He went into our room and picked some of his clothes, and he had left me right there on my knees crying and begging for forgiveness. He left me with a parting comment. "You don't deserve a third chance, and you've proved your loyalty is worse than an animal supporting only who feeds it." He hasn't come home since then, and I really cannot deal with the silence anymore. I'm so scared of his reaction. His silence. I haven't heard anything from any lawyers or from his family, which means he hasn't told anyone yet about the whole thing. And when I tried reaching out to him, he wouldn't pick up my calls or even respond to them. My texts are all left unread and unanswered. I don't know what to do anymore. I regret everything I've done to ruin my marriage, and I'm sincerely sorry. That's why I'm here now, writing this. I don't know what else to do. I don't have anyone I can talk to about this, not Jenna or Lisa, not my mom, not even my closest friends. They wouldn't understand. Or worse, they'd judge me for what I've done. I feel so alone, and I'm terrified of what's going to happen if I can't fix this. Daniel is the love of my life, my best friend, the father of my child. I can't imagine my life without him, but I feel like I've ruined everything. If anyone out there has been through something like this or has any advice, please, I'm begging you to help me. I love Daniel with all my heart, and I don't want to lose him, but I don't even know where to start. How do you fix something when you've already broken it so completely? Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been a few weeks since my first post, and everything has gone from bad to worse. I'm in the worst state imaginable, and it's really all my fault. Everything and everyone I have ever known has now abandoned me. I have no one on my side, and I have never felt as alone as I feel right now. Daniel has finally broken his silence. He had with a divorce and a custody lawsuit. He wanted to take everything away from me, and he did. The court, after seeing all the evidence of my affair, considered me unfit to be a mother. Unfit as an example to a girl child, and they had granted him custody of Sophia, our daughter. I was left with nothing for settlement, and although I wanted nothing but the people I desperately had torn apart, Daniel made sure that I got absolutely nothing. I was thrown out of the house with orders from the court, and I was not allowed to leave the house with anything that was bought either by Daniel or by the 2 of us collectively. Although it was pretty easy, I didn't work. I was simply a housewife, so everything belonged to Daniel literally. Even the ones I had bought were bought with the money he gave me. I was left with nothing. No family, no friends, no home, no Sophia, no Daniel. My mom, now knowing the truth, had first given me a lecture on how she never for once cheated on my father until he died, and even until now she's faithful to his memories. She then went ahead to deny me access to her home, as she doesn't want anything to do with me because I apparently have brought shame upon our household. Until now, she still refuses to speak to me and has even forbidden my siblings to do the same. My friends Jenna and Lisa at first started avoiding me subtly. It was first with the excuses. Busy with work. I have several deadlines. Family is demanding. And later it was very noticeable that their excuses were just simply excuses. I knew they still met with each other, but I was never invited. They didn't want anything to do with a cheating friend, and they couldn't make it more clear than that. I stopped calling them so they didn't have to lie so blatantly. I couldn't blame them anyways. It was all my fault to begin with. I ruined everything with my own hands, and now I had to bear the consequences of it all. I've lost everything, and I have no idea how to fix anything. It's probably too late to fix anything. I've torn my life apart right from the very root, and there's no way to plant an already dead root because there are no fruits it would bear. I hate myself so much. for allowing some stupid pleasure that hadn't even lasted take over my entire life and burn it to the ground. Now that I had nothing but time to think and think, I realized just what a selfish woman I had been. There was nothing I gained from the affair except everything negative. The sex that I kept going back for? Daniel wouldn't have hesitated if I suggested spicing up our marriage. The thrilling excitement of something new? Daniel wouldn't have hesitated to make me happy and excited about our relationship. He would have done everything for me if only I had just asked. But I was so stupidly sucked up in my own self-pity and absurdity that I allowed some tiny flirtation to blow me away. Now all that I've ever worked so hard at building are all gone. Within the twinkle of an eye, I've lost everything dear to me. And I cannot even begin to describe just how hurtful that is to me. I feel terrible, like I have done something irreversible. Well, I understand now that Daniel has made the consequences of my actions irreversible forever. He had plucked the thorn I planted in our home and stuck it to my skin deeply, and I cannot seem to be able to get it out. Or rather, I don't want to get it out. I should pay for what I did. I ruined a perfect home. I was selfish and greedy, and I should pay for what I did. I turned away from a perfectly happy life for one of sorrow, of regret, of pain, and of sadness. I should never have paid attention to Alex the night of that club. Hell, I shouldn't have even agreed to go with Jenna and Lisa to that party and flirted my way to a table. I should have never gone with Alex in his car and had sex with him. I should have blocked him off immediately. He messaged me and started chatting with me. I shouldn't have let everything blow off beyond proportion between us, because I'm apparently just a conquest on his bedpost to brag about to his friends. He bragged about having me and even showed off my nudes to my husband and his friends. I feel ashamed of myself when I try to imagine how he must have grinned and waved his phone over the table with drinks flying around. How the other friends must have laughed and hailed him about his libido, which even a married woman cannot get enough of. How my husband must have looked like watching his friends look and zoom the picture of his own wife while he was right there. How he must have felt finding out about my affair from my lover. I feel so stupid for ever feeling the need to cheat on my husband, especially when he never gave me any reason to doubt his love and affection towards me. In fact, he never made me feel like I needed to seek some sort of validation from another man. It all boils down back to the fact that I was just being an ingrate and a selfish little whore, and I regret everything I did. I regret it all, and I wish so desperately that I can turn back the hands of time to the moment when I started making all the wrong decisions so I could have at least made the right ones. The first would probably have been turning on my heels and running back home from the entrance of the club. Update. Hello, Reddits. This actually is my last post here. It's been 3 months since the whole issue with Daniel. 3 whole months. You'd expect that everything would have at least been calm and that everything has started settling down. But that's not the case with me. Everything keeps getting worse and worse. My family and everyone else that I've ever known still look at me like I'm that hateful person that should be a castaway amongst the living. I still live with the shame of everything I had done. And the worst pain of it all is knowing that I have my daughter far away from me. I don't have the right to hold or touch her anymore, to hear her melodious laughter when I tickle her, to watch her clap and sing along with her baby cartoons when I put them on, to step on her toys scattered on the floor and watch out for her crying and wanting a cuddle at night. I miss everything. The thought of someone else getting those privileges I had always taken for granted feels so painful. It feels like my heart is getting ripped out of my chest and placed back, only to do the same thing over and over again. I'm exhausted each day not because of work, but because my head has turned into an official broken recorder, replaying everything I did wrong, and reminding me of things I could have done to avoid all of this mess. You cannot count how many times I've wished so desperately that I would sleep and wake up back in my house, in my husband's arms, and that all of these were a horrible dream. I know that life would have been better and prettier if I hadn't thought it wise to cheat, but then karma is for sure a bad bitch. She didn't wait around for second chances, she just dishes out revenge while it's hot. And she sure served it to me so hot, it burned. Imagining seeing Daniel with another woman and him looking down at her and smiling at her with love evident in his eyes, just as he did with me just a few months ago, is another thought that has me gasping for air. I cannot imagine another woman having all that I had and took for granted. It would hurt so much. But then I know it's inevitable. I lost the chance to be a wife and a mother, and now another woman was going to see that great opportunity and take advantage of it. I wish so desperately that there's something I could do to perhaps alter how things have turned out, but I know sadly that there isn't anything I could try that will ever get Daniel to forgive me. Not with the embarrassment I caused him and the way I threw away his love. I've hurt the people I love the most in the world, and I will forever bear the brunt of the consequences of my actions. Goodbye, guys. I sure hope you learned a thing or two from my very miserable life.